over the world to realize their maximum potentials and grow. We will open up for live Q&A at the end of this event. Please submit your questions in the chat function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation. None of what we do would be possible without our amazing support from sponsors. We're humbled by their contributions. And during these unique times, we're really curious about your sentiment among the entrepreneurs within our community. We'd like to start by taking a poll to let us know how you're feeling about your business right now. How are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Please take a few seconds to fill out this poll. Optimistic seems to be our top choice. Next question, what type of entrepreneur are you? It looks like we have both entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs in this group. And finally, what is keeping you up at night? It looks like finance and sales for entrepreneurs in the group. Thank you all so much. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Jamie Greenwood for our first of the series, Adaptive Resilience for Leaders of a New World. Jamie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Hold on, let's make sure the camera's right. I am thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be here. And this is one of my favorite topics of adaptive resilience, especially for leaders of a new world. And this is really new, what we are in. And the question then is, how do we keep going in a way that replenishes us, in a way that doesn't deplete us, but actually fills our cup, fills our well, so we can keep going. And that's one of my primary passions in the work that I do. And we're going to be getting into all kinds of things today. And I love the last question, like, what keeps you up at night? I was like, how long do you have? But there are a number of things that I think keep us all up at night when it comes to our business. And one of the ways that we can ease some of the things that keep us up at night is by learning how to remain centered, remain kind of aware that we have agency around our calm. And today really is going to be about what resilience is, what resilience is not, because there are a lot of things that we think resilience is that I think there's some false information there that we're going to clear up, and how to really increase our bandwidth so that we can feel more focused, more clear, more wise in our daily actions. And so where we're going to start is, what is resilience? And resilience is the ability to bounce back, the ability to, after we fall, get back up. And that's very different, because I think that a lot of people think of resilience as grit or as perseverance, as how can I just keep going, push through, take no prisoners, and just make it happen. And that that is useful in some times. But if we live in that way, if that is how we are always doing business, if that is how we are always living our lives, if that's how we are always parenting or partnering, it's really exhausting. And so what resilience offers us is a way to not only bounce back more quickly, but a way to be with all that is here. That's really what resilience is. It's kind of stretching into our capacity to be with all that is here, which is very different than grit. Grit is like, nothing's here, I see nothing, and you're just like, keep going, right? So it's a different way of navigating our lives, and really, I think, the way that our lives are being asked to be navigated. That especially in this time of, it depends on where you are. I'm in California and we are under shelter in place still. And like, grit is not going to work for me right now. Grit is going to get me in trouble. Grit is going to keep me feeling tight, feeling anxious, feeling like I'm not getting enough done, because I actually can't get that much done from, I can get a little bit done from my bedroom, but like not as much as I'm used to, right? And so if I can switch from grit, which I also connect with gripping, to resilience, which I imagine as kind of open-handed presence, I can be with what's here. I can have a clearer focus on all that's going on around me. And then I can decide where I want to go. And it's really, if we're thinking about it on a somatic level, and actually I'm going to do a practice with you right now, which is really fun. Do me a favor and close your eyes. But I always like to start with a big deep breath. So let's just start. Let's close our eyes together and place a hand on your body, maybe on your legs, on your belly, or on your chest. And just checking in, taking a big deep breath in and letting it out. And breathing in and letting it out. And continue on with this breath, breathing in, expansion, breathing out, grounding into presence. And I now want you to imagine what it feels like in your body when you are in a space of grit, when you are in a space of pushing through. What does that feel like in your body? And where does that experience live in your body? For me, grit felt like a very tight ball right under my sternum. Just noticing where does grit live and what does grit feel like in your body? All right, let's take a big deep breath and wash that away. Letting go of grit, letting go of any tension. Breathing in, expanding, breathing out, grounding. And now I want you to breathe into resilience. What resilience feels like. The ability to bounce back. The ability to stand up after you've fallen down. The incredible capacity to be present for whatever arises. What does that feel like in your body? Where does that live in your body? Maybe it feels like very solid legs, an expansion in your chest. Feeling into resilience. And when you're ready, take another big deep breath in. And let that go. Just kind of let that wash through you and out. So much of adaptive resilience is about being able to feel into what is happening within us during difficult circumstances, and then choose where we want to go from there. Right? And so part of the practice, and I'm so thrilled that there are actually 4 parts to this series. This is number 1. We're going to have 2, 3, and 4. And you're going to have homework. Get excited. And each session is going to allow you to practice some of the tools that we are talking about today. And one of the things I want you to start practicing is really tracking the embodied experience of your emotional states. That's what we just did here, right? What does grit feel like in your body? Because generally, we keep everything, especially as entrepreneurs, we are thinkers, we are problem solvers, we get it done. Like there's a big egoic tie to how we think we need to be in the world. And usually it has nothing to do with our bodies or going slow, right? And that's actually what resilience asks. It asks that we take a moment, we take a pause. What's happening in my body right now? Right? Okay, I'm feeling, right? It's like if we're in grit, if we're like, I have to get this done. When we check into what's happening with our bodies, tension, tightness, we can then breathe, reconnect, and then choose, well, what does resilience feel like? And then from that place, the question is, how would I act? You know, when we think about it, how we act out of grit and perseverance and really kind of survival, right? And for those of us who answered the poll in the beginning of like, how are you, like, where are you in your business? And a number of people put surviving, right? If we are in a survival mode with our business, we are kind of always in a tense physical place, which really narrows our choices, not only about how we're feeling in our body, but narrows our choices just kind of business-wise, because we can't, you know, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we're like, we're also visionaries. It's really hard to see anything when we are locked into survival and into grit and into pushing through. Things get very narrow and very tight. As I say that, I can even like feel that in my body. And so imagining that resilience, adaptive resilience, it does ask for different things in different situations, but really it offers expansion. It offers really like a bird's eye view to see what's happening outside of us, but also what's happening inside of us. And that's really what's most important, especially as we think about, for those of you that are entrepreneurs working in teams, or if you are the boss of your company, the idea of how we show up for our employees or for our teammates and team members has so much to do with what's happening inside of our bodies. And we always think like, no, it's not my body. I just have to like focus here on my brain. And it's an exciting kind of new way to bring in so much more information into your world and into the way in which you deal with coworkers and employees when you are aware of what's happening in your body. I'm just gonna let that settle for a second, and check the chat for a moment. Welcome everyone. We have people from all over. I just want to read something that Maria wrote. if we don't pause, we can't expand our thinking to be better problem solvers. Comes from such a different place than hustle and grit, right? Yes. Yes. And it's really important for those of us that have a resistance to slowness, which like I don't anymore. Well, ooh, I almost lied to you. I I almost said I don't anymore. I'm so down with slow. I'm like so not, but I'm working towards it. And what I have found is that there's a lot of information in really peeling back the layers behind our resistance to going slower. And this is actually some of the questions that will be posed to you in the homework. I'm going to be offering you guys some journaling questions. And part of this is, what is my resistance to slowness? If resilience is really about being present with what is instead of jamming through, why do I believe that that's not okay? You know, and there's so many reasons. For those of us who live in the US and experience American culture, there really is no place to stop. You know, especially being, for those of you who are in the Bay Area, especially those who are connected to tech, slowness is death, right? And there might be lip service given to it that like, it's okay, but really the idea of not always being hustling and pushing through, we have a lot of ideas about that and how that's not okay. And so to fully embrace the theories behind adaptive resilience, we have to recognize our resistance to it and what is being asked of us to shift, right? So you'll get more into that with your homework. What I also wanted to get into now is really when we are in a tough spot, what do we do about it? And so I want to just ask that question right now, and please put your answers in the chat box. Like when you're currently in a tough spot, whether that's when it comes to your business, when your kids are having a meltdown while you're trying to work, when you're trying to like engage in business, what is generally your immediate reaction? Marie wrote, I lose my temper. Yeah. I fill with anxiety. Yeah. Yeah. What else? What are kind of your immediate go-tos? And there are no wrong answers here. This is the beginning of really finding out where we're starting and where we can then go when it comes to resilience. So as you all begin to answer this question for yourself, what is my knee-jerk reaction? Going into repression or shutdown mode. I tend to want to act, but it's better to pause and reflect. Yeah. I lose focus. Yes. Yeah. Another one that I see a lot in my work with clients is fixer, of like, there's a problem, let me fix it, right? Or there's a problem, let me appease that person who is having the problem. Yeah, and often our reactions are dependent on who we're dealing with, right? Like my immediate reaction with my kids is like anger. My immediate reaction with like, let's say an upset client is appeasement. What can I do to make you happy? Anything, right? With my partner, depends on the situation. But knowing that our immediate responses change depending on who we're dealing with is really helpful, because we don't always go to fight or flight or freeze or appease. It is situational. And that means that our resilience can also shapeshift and be situational as well. And really what resilience does for us in these moments is it gives us choice, right? If your immediate reaction is anger, or if your immediate reaction is anxiety or appeasement, what resilience does is give you space to then choose, is this how I want to respond, or is there another option? So I want to do another exercise with you, which I think is really, really important, because one of the ways in which people kind of like to use to use a phrase I heard recently, like kind of like hot wire, like kind of like skip around the hard stuff and just like go to the easy stuff, is to kind of jump over the immediate response and try and go straight to the resilience of like, okay, I've taken a breath. I can see clearly now. Where am I going? Right? It's like, hold on a second. And because what resilience first asks of us is to be present with our anger, right? To be present with our anxiety, to not push it away, to not make it wrong, to not decide that I am now, I'm now emotionally resilient and I don't do anxiety anymore. And then you get anxious and you beat yourself up for having anxiety, like that whole trail. The first thing we have to do when we have an immediate reaction that is one that we do not necessarily want to experience anymore is to be with that immediate response, to then let it soften so that then we can choose. So we're going to try that now. So what I want you to do is take your hand and some of you have probably already done this before, but make your hand into a fist. Make it super, super tight, okay? And now try to open your fist. Try really hard. And just notice what happens as you try to get in there and like fix that fist. Okay, you can stop. What happened? And please put it in the chat box. I'd love to hear what did you notice in trying to fix your tight fist? One of the things that I noticed was that it got tighter. It was like, oh, you're trying to open me? Ha! Come on. Like, it really, it continued to clench. Laura just wrote no movement. The fist resisted. Yes. Right? And this is actually what happens when we have an immediate response that we then decide is wrong or that we're trying to fight. That experience, that anxiety, that anger is like doubles down. And it's like, oh, you're trying to get rid of me? It's on. It's so on. So now let's try something else. So make your fist again. You just take a deep breath. Let's settle back into our bodies. And now take your second hand and just hold your fist. Just hold it. Imagining the hand that is holding the fist is just, it's like a comfy chair. Just allowing the fist to be exactly as it is. It's here for support and nothing else. Notice what's happening to your fist. Okay, you can release that. Now, feel free to write in the chat box, what happened to the fist that was being supported? It relaxed. Yeah. Anything else? It got tired of tensing. Yeah. Yeah. So what we just experienced is what happens when we have a conditioned response of, fight, flight, freeze, appease. And instead of fighting that thing, we just hold it. We just hold it. And we're present for it. And we support it. And we allow it to exist. It just kind of relaxes on its own. Because so much of what our conditioned response is when it comes to our, our teams and our businesses and our families and our work, so much of what that conditioned tendency or conditioned response is asking for is acknowledgement. Like, I see you. I see you, anxiety. It's not easy. What can I do for you? It's completely different. It's a completely different paradigm shift to learn to be present with a conditioned tendency instead of trying to change it. And this, if, you know, I'm a coach, so like my whole life is trying to get people to like change, except actually what I've realized in the last maybe 6 or 7 years of my practice is that my work is really about helping people be with what's here. And in the presence of what's here, we have greater capacity to change. But if we were always trying to change without first being present with what's here, the change is never fully realized because we haven't been present for the many parts of us that are here that need the acknowledgement, which is actually a really helpful exercise when dealing with I almost said like a difficult coworker. It's like, well, we don't know if they're difficult. They may be difficult for you. They might not be difficult for someone else, but someone who there might be tension with. It's like, what would it be like for you, instead of trying to fix them or fix the problem, to be present with them in that moment of tension and asking them, what's present for you right now? What's present for me is I'm a little nervous that like we're not on the same page. Yes, my friend Maria, who's here, who wrote an incredible book on empathy, just wrote empathy. It's so true. It's like, oh, but it starts with you. It starts with you. Like, how present can you be with yourself? So then you can then offer that presence to the person in front of you. Because so often conflict, one of the reasons why conflict has a hard time being resolved is that no one is seeing each other. No one's being present for each other. Everyone is just looking for the solution, thinking that that is resilience. But the solution isn't resilient. It is not resilience in action. Resilience in action is what's here right now. Who are you? Who am I? What can we be with? And then after we do that thing, where can we go together? So for any questions that are coming up as I am saying all these things, please put them into the chat box because I would love to hear. And, you know, I'm part of my work as an emotional resilience strategist and also taking a very strong somatic lens is being very aware of what's happening in our bodies during all of this. You know, as I'm even talking about this to you, what's happening in your body as you're receiving it? Oh, thank you for this question, Bonnie. What is your practice for being with breath, stillness, movement, etc.? That's a really good question. And the answer is, it depends on what my scenario is. If there was someone in front of me and like we are in a thing, my immediate being with is breath. And then my second being with is compassion. Of like, oh, we're in a moment. This is hard for me. This is probably hard for them. Okay, I can be with that. Let's breathe. Now, if I'm in a scenario where I have been triggered and I'm alone, always movement. I love to dance. I love to shake. I love to just move things through my body. And so that's an incredible tool to use when you are alone. And this is something I've started employing, which is, it's an interesting test for yourself. Like if you are in conflict with someone, is asking for a pause to then step back and do your movement or your shaking or your dance and then come back 5 minutes later. Let's take a pause. You know, for years, it never even occurred to me because I thought that was in some way rude, that I was in some way kind of abandoning the person. But the truth was that we both needed a pause. We both needed a second. And then you can come back together from a place of, you know, you shook it out, and that person hopefully has taken a moment to breathe and connect. And then you can come back to a place where you can hear each other. Yeah. Going to gratitude, also having anxiety, headaches, so I need to breathe more. Yes. The breath, it's so cliche to the point that I have resisted it. Like, really, I just have to breathe, like, okay, it's not working. You know? But really it's like, okay. And I'm again, you're receiving journaling questions, but you're also receiving a meditation, a 10-minute meditation that is going to really train your body to begin to notice all of the sensations and emotions that are happening in it at any given time. Because that's really the magic here in the resilience, is what's becoming so aware of what's happening in you that you have enough space to be with what's here, and then maybe take a breath and say, like, oh, I'm anxious. Okay. And even naming it. And this is something that I would love to see really be in all kinds of business culture and entrepreneurship culture, is like the naming of what's here. Like, what would happen if during a job interview, you could just name, like, I'm nervous. And you can certainly name that to yourself, which is something that is incredibly beneficial. But just having a community or having a culture that allowed for people to be human and made space for that, I think would really be, it would change everything. Are there any more questions about this piece of it, of like, what does it look like to be with? And what does it look like to kind of sit with, and this is something I haven't really named yet, but, you know, sitting with discomfort. How good is everybody with sitting with discomfort? Please answer honestly. Because if there's one thing that's going to prevent adaptive resilience, it's a resistance to sitting with discomfort. Yeah, not so good. Yeah, it's and the important thing to know is that as animals, like, we are not really trained to sit in discomfort, right? We are trained to get out of discomfort as quickly as possible, right? And so there has to be a bit of like a mind trick, knowing that part of sitting with the discomfort of our emotional experience is strength. You know, there's certainly different people have, you know, there are different narratives depending on where we all come from. But one of the narratives that I have become very familiar with, and I see a lot in my clients, is that to almost like indulge, you don't want to indulge discomfort. You just want to keep going, right? And to be with what's uncomfortable is almost weakness. To give it any attention is almost a sign of weakness. Whereas it's actually the opposite. Now this is a whole nother conversation that we can have, but I'm sure there are plenty of things that we kind of lean into in terms of discomfort. But generally, when it comes to our emotional states, we don't like to be with them. We like to move past them as quickly as possible. And we move past them in all different kinds of ways. You know, one of them I know is the ways in which we numb. You know, some of us numb what we're experiencing and what we are feeling with a lot of work, right? We just keep working and we keep working and we keep working. or, we drink, or we eat, or we play out the same type of relationships over and over and over again. Like, these are all forms of numbing, all forms of resisting what we're experiencing in the moment. I'm just going to read some things that some people have written. I vacillate with extremes. Sometimes I can totally imagine myself as just a human on earth, and the next moment I am so consumed by my challenges and my problems. Yeah. Welcome. Welcome to having a human brain. Like, we like, it's incredible what our mind can do in a split second of being able to feel connected and at peace, and then in another split second feeling anxious and worried. And so that's the practice of coming back to what's here, where am I now? And next week, yes, next Thursday, we're going to be talking about a number of different tools that I have in regards to creating calm in the middle of chaos. But the beginning starts here with, what am I experiencing in my body? And I also want to say that the body does not always feel like a safe place. Not everybody feels safe in their body and feeling into their body. If you are one of those people, proceed slowly. Not with caution, but just proceed slowly. That as you begin to kind of, what does it feel like to notice where tension lives in your body? If there is a big kind of emotional flush that you experience by tapping into the somatic nature of that feeling, just keep breathing. Just keep breathing. There's no, again, I'm going to go back to kind of the culture that I work in a lot, which is American culture. There's not a lot of conversation around the body and what's happening. There's a lot of conversation around like how the body is supposed to look and how you're supposed to be, feeding your body and exercising your body. And there's all kinds of conversations around how we manipulate the body. But there's not a lot of conversation around what the body is experiencing. And so if this is a new conversation for you, I invite you to stay and just go slow. And begin to find the language of what the sensations feel like in your body. So that, can look like movement. Like, is there tingling? Is there, one of the sensations I get a lot when I am experiencing overwhelm or anxiety is like a tornado. It feels like a whole tornado is in my body, right? And so just like, oh, I'm in a tornado phase right now. Okay. Can I be with the tornado? And maybe you can't. And so you take a break, you do something else, and then you come back. It's a very interesting practice to see, and I would love you all to do this in the next week or so. When you experience kind of an immediate response, a conditioned tendency of, anger, rage, appeasement, fight, flight, freeze, go into that immediate response, which you know well. And then the next time it happens, see if you can practice just being present with it, and notice how presence changes your final action, right? If your final action with experiencing anger is to yell and scream, or if your final action with appeasement is just to be like, oh, anything I can do for you, and just like completely ignore whatever you need in that moment, see what happens to your final action in the presence of presence, really. What does that offer you? What are you given? Some of the things that I notice is just a greater sense of space, like almost like my organs have more space to like move and to be, I also have a willingness to be in conversation with the person in front of me. If this is, you know, either that or like with the people in the room, I am more willing to listen to them instead of being like, you know, my reaction is always like, I'm right, you're wrong. Right? And so what presence does is it just softens that immediate knee jerk of like, I'm right, you're wrong, and let me tell you how wrong you are. Right? It's just, all right, where are you in this moment? Here's where I am. So I'm looking at the time, and we're moving into kind of the Q&A round. So if you have any questions about what we have discussed, the trajectory of today was just to get into what resilience is and what resilience is not. To remember that when we have a conditioned response, the difference between trying to fix it and just being present with it, right? What does that do? And then to begin to feel our conditioned tendencies in our body. Where do they live and what do they feel like? So that we can, after we've been kind of accepting of them, choose a different direction if that's where we want to go. And knowing that in choosing a different direction, we are also open to being more compassionate with the people who are in front of us. And we're going to get deeper into compassion and compassion practices in the upcoming sessions. So one question that just came in, how can we find resilience? Oh my God, Maria. All right, how can we find resilience in times like these that are so out of control? Thank you for this question. As a coach, so many of my years has been about helping my clients find clarity and truth for themselves. And we are currently in a time when there really is no clarity and we don't know what's true and what's not. So what do we do? And what resilience looks like in that is not, you know, doing all these practices that we just saw, that we just experienced to find the right answer, but doing all of these practices so that we can settle our systems in the unknown. Learning how to, what this time is asking for is us learning how to live without having any answers. Now, I say that, of course, we have answers for ourselves. We can, you know, we can decide what we're going to eat for the day. If we are lucky enough to, you know, have a lot of food and access, we can decide, especially as entrepreneurs, like what we're going to be focusing on during that day. All of those things are helpful to create a sense of structure and control. But when it comes to resilience, resilience is not like the easy out for like finding the answers. Resilience is more teaching us how to stretch into the fact that we've never seen anything like this. And as people that have never seen anything like this, how can I continue day after day to remind myself, in this moment, I am okay? And that's another piece of this, that so much of resilience is just moment to moment. Because a lot of our fears, there are genuine, actual, real things to be afraid of right now. And then there are also things that are in the future that we are scared of as well. So reminding ourselves again and again, in this moment, I am okay. And if in this moment you're not okay, finding a small slice of you that is. In this moment, there is a small part of me that is okay. Like, okay, I'm going to hold on to that small part. And from that small part, how are we going to move forward? Oh, yeah, Maria just said, another Maria, Maria Tranquilli just said, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question directly, please do so. we can be in conversation with each other, which is always nice. And even if it's not a question, I would love to hear how any of this is landing with you. Even if it's like, this is crap, help, it's not working. You know, like that's real too. I did it. I did a facilitation yesterday where I was talking about compassion and how we learn how to be compassionate with ourselves. And someone was like, listen, it sounds great, but like, I don't even know where to begin. And it was such an honest reflection. And so we talked about what the beginning of compassion looks like, which is really just recognizing that you're being unkind, just the recognition. And that's winning. But anyway, so I'm also open to any reflections that you have. They don't have to be questions. And I'd also like to know, for those of you that have a resilience practice, what does it look like for you? Because we're all in this together and we are all learning together. And I am open to any strategies that you all are currently employing that I may not know about. Very grounding. Oh, thank you. Oh, you're welcome, Susan. Thank you. I think talking things out with others helps. Yes. And being brave in that, being brave in our conversations. Again, from a place of, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to do this anyway, because I can be present with what is. And, you know, they're probably uncomfortable too. Well, I'm sure there are some people who enjoy conflict, but at this stage, I think we're all kind of tapped out. It's like, how easy can I make this? Yeah. Trying to focus on how I want to feel and finding one thing that will help me get there. Yes. So thank you, Bonnie. You know, what Bonnie is naming is kind of this practice of centering. And I'm going to be giving you a practice of centering next week, of how do we just come back to the middle. Breath work, absolutely. Someone just said getting centered in nature. For me, I have a number of things, and they're not, you know, because in this time, kind of like the big things that I would normally do, I can't do. Like, you know, we're not going to like go travel and have a new experience and do all, like, we can't really do those things. So it becomes like really granular. What's one tiny thing that I can do that will bring me back to center, and maybe even bring me back to joy? You know, because joy is very centering. Joy reminds us who we are, what we love, and what we care about. So I encourage you to begin to seek out joy also as a way of finding resilience. You know, I'm lucky. I have, well, lucky, not lucky. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. They are insane, but they bring me so much joy. They're hilarious. They're ridiculous. And so I can be in their presence and remember, like, okay, all right, like, it's not so bad. We're okay. I'm okay. You know, and it doesn't have to be all day. It can just be in that moment, because even filling our cup a little bit with joy is enough to sustain us during a day. Ming wrote connection with people, and considering the possibility that this time was meant to happen to make some big nurturing changes in our society. Oh, let that be so. Let that be so. Let that be true. And also, you know, what can we do to reduce suffering, you know, in the middle of all of this? There is a quick survey that Olivia Wong just put into the chat box for everyone, to get your thoughts on how today went. And, you know, there's so much more to go into on this topic, but what I really want you to settle into is just the practice of resilience and being present without judgment. I haven't even used that word once today, which is amazing. But like, can we be present with ourselves without judgment? Or if we're judging, notice the judging and not judging ourselves for judging. Who does that? I like I'm not judging anymore. Oh, I'm totally judging that person. Oh, I'm so judgmental. What's wrong with me? You know, can we be present with whatever shows up, even if it's unsightly, you know, even if it's yucky.
We have a guest that would like to speak, and she's been
Yeah.
unmuted.
Hi. I don't have a resilience practice comment, but I was going to say, and I'm trying to remember what the original question was, but like trying to release this like limiting belief of what you said earlier about like entrepreneurs being so cerebral and goal focused, ego based problem solvers, and like feeling that like that's the way you have to be a success. Like that's how we were taught to become like a type of industry. And so like, how do you let that go and still believe that you can succeed in the way that you want to?
I think we should all just take a moment and cry together. Because like, oh my God. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Not only do I want to cry, now I'm very sweaty. It's a really intense question because it's so true. It's a mode of operating that we have been told by the culture in which we live that this is the only way it happens. This is the only way you are going to be a success. And I think what it comes down to is, as Maria just said, we must redefine success. One, we have to redefine success. I know that we have men on this call, but I'm also seeing a lot of female faces. Like most of these rules, all of these rules, have been created by patriarchy. And so we have to begin to redefine it for ourselves in a way that works not just for us, but for everyone. Because what we know is that the idea that being a success means you have to die and or kill yourself in the process is leading, not only to burnout, but to illness, real, true illness. So if we know that to be true, that we have to come up with a more sustainable way. So it's not just, to your point, Laura, it's not just the idea that we have to like change our minds, though that is very, very important. But it's also important to remember that there is an entire system based on this idea. You didn't just like make it up on your own. And so what we have to do is not only change the belief within ourselves, but begin to change the system. And that system begins to change when we decide that we're no longer going to engage in that same way. And like thinking about small forms of resistance. So one of my small forms of resistance is I take naps during the day. I take naps. Like that is, if you really believe in this idea that like you are only a success by how much time you put in, like I am a big loser because I take naps because I'm tired. And I know that I can only be the best at what I do if I'm well rested. I don't nap every day because I don't have that luxury, but on the days I can, I do. And that is my form of resistance. And I no longer feel guilty about it. So my question to you would be, what is one small form of resistance in your own life and in your own work that pushes back against this idea that we're only as good as what we produce and what we consume? Steve just wrote, naps are great. Yeah, go naps. Yeah. Anything else as we wrap up this time? Let me see. I think there might be. Oh, I love that idea. Maria just said, why don't we all pick our, I love you, Maria. Maria's like, why don't we all pick one form of resistance? So let's all, and I'll choose something fresh. I won't choose naps, even though I'm not letting that one go. But what is your one form of resistance so that you can actually begin to change how you do your business, how you want to do your business in a sustainable, connected, actually resilient way? All right, Maria, since you posed it, let's hear it. Take Friday afternoons off if I can. Yeah. Meditate, pray, spend time with my son. Yeah, that's been an interesting thing too. You know, my 3-year-old is very, very talkative. And I was coming into the room to do this talk, and she's like, oh, mommy's working again. I'm like, oh. So we have to have a talk now that like mama loves her work, but that I could also carve out time for her later in the day. Alone time, yes. Getting into the swimming pool, yes. Actively seeking joy through creative expression, right? And like letting that creative expression not be for anyone else's benefit or moving you forward in any way, that it's just like wild, like the way kids are with paint. You know, they just like, like just letting it be a true expression. Working out nearly every day. Yeah. Same, Susan. If I even 20 minutes, if I can just move my body for 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, winning. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Maria, for posing that. And everyone, please, I have a visual of all of them in the chat. And so we'll keep those as good reminders for each other. Practicing self-care more often. Yeah. Thank you. So as I said a few times, there is some homework. There is a meditation that I would like you to practice. Do it as many times as you want. It's a beautiful way to begin to just feel into your body in a safe, slow way so that you can begin to see what's happening here. And then also some journaling questions that will begin to kind of peel back some layers for you so that next week when we talk about how do we find calm in the middle of chaos, we'll be ready to go. All right. And Maria, is there any, you're ready to close out. So with that, thank you so much, everyone.
Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our community, to share your insights, and to give us such a great overview. The first of a series of 4, so we hope to see you all next Thursday. On behalf of the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and everyone in attendance today, we sincerely thank you for joining us. And to everyone who has been in attendance, if you have a few moments, please fill out the survey that Olivia, our NASDAQ manager, has shared in the chat. It will help Jamie know exactly what has worked during this last hour together and what your thoughts have been. So please fill that out for us, and we look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Feel free to let us know again in the survey how you felt today went. And Jamie, thank you so much. This has been immense. We hope to see everyone next week.
My pleasure. Bye, everyone.